Thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101, another stamp along video on how to do water in a scene. In scenic stamping, there's a lot of water elements that go on in a scene, be it a small little area of a scene or more prominent one like in our stamp alongs before. Different color schemes, large bodies of water, where it's just the whole thing is water. There's no sky in there. Another recent video where there's water here, but it's kind of more reflective of what's going on in the sky. But in this video here, I'm going to show you how to use the water texture stamp in a certain way. There's more ways to do it than one, but how to achieve kind of a more shimmery feel and one that where the ripples are kind of affected by the overall lighting scheme of a scene. You're going to be utilizing the color scheme from the previous stamp along videos, just a light, medium, and dark tone. And we'll do that in a very simple way, and I'll show you how that kind of that streaking motion and the overall kind of value scheme of a scene applies to not only water but kind of grassier, land elements as well. In this video, the water texture stamp. Okay. If you choose to stamp along or just watch, thanks for tuning in, and hope you enjoy it. Okay, water in scenic stamping plays a significant role in many scenes, so I thought we would do some of the very basics as far as the way that I approach water, and we would do it in one monochromatic color scheme again, using these blue tones again, and just approach it that way to keep things nice and simple. Here are some different scenes here that I've done recently, and you can see the water, how water has been kind of rendered with the different types of stamps using water textures, colors, streaks using sponging methods, and some additional stamps placed in here. But water tends to be a kind of almost like a mirror, so it would take on the characteristics of the kind of the color scheme around it. Here's the autumn one that was done recently. A lot of these are approached differently, though. Some of them, there's not very much to it. It might be just some streaks in the water using some kind of sponging method. On this one here, I use sky elements down here in the water to represent a reflection. In here, there's a lot of texture in here using some additional rocks. This one here, the scene is much bigger, but so it's reduced down, but there's still a little bit of water texture in there, but you can see kind of the colors down here reflecting what's going on up in the sky. Alright? But again, just to keep things nice and simple, the water pattern small stamp here, the 231C, is the one that I use quite a bit. And there's more than one way to do this, as with just about everything that has to do with stamping, and especially scenic stamping. You can stamp this first, you can stamp it in different types of colors. I'm going to show you the way that I use it most of the time, okay? And I usually apply some colors first in my sponging method, okay? So, if you're going to stamp along with this one, what you'll want is some sort of sponging tool. You can use your kind of cosmetic types of sponges, you can use your stylus tools if you have them. Why don't I use both? Okay? What you'll need are 3 values of blue. The lightest blue being kind of the most important. If you happen to have the seashells ones or the Adirondack lights, or if you happen to have a light blue re-inker for any of your colors, Memento Summer Sky, here's a Marvy number 60 Salvia blue, Adirondack lights aqua, this one says Seashells Ocean Aqua. They changed the name to Adirondack Lights Aqua, then they discontinued the entire line, unfortunately. But you're going to use any of these colors, or if you have all of them, you can use all of them. And they'll be used in the same way. Alright, what we have is a glossy cardstock. It's a quarter page. Alright, now let's see. I tell you what, I think I'm going to use this Memento Summer Sky. I don't know how many of you have re-inker fluids. Now, if you have re-inker fluid, it would go a lot faster, okay? Just because you can put a lot of re-inker fluid down, sop it up in your your sponging tool, and it just applies so much faster because you're starting off with a lot more ink in the sponging applicator, okay? Alright, start off with your lightest tone. Alright, now we're going to want to get a good saturation. Now, this one's going to be a landscape format, meaning long, right? Now, you can use any type of paper you want. You can use a round one if you want to, but what I'm getting at right here is I'm turning my card kind of vertical because this is the natural motion of my hand, okay? It's nice and ergonomic. Right? You don't have to do things like this. This is not comfortable to my hand right here. And we're going to be doing a lot of swiping, so why not turn it in the direction that your hand and your fingers move naturally, okay? If you're left-handed, you do it this way, right? Okay? Now what I'm doing is I'm getting some good ink down, and remember to work your quadrants. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm kind of streaking this on. I might get a little bit of a puddle of ink here and then spread it across. You have to kind of test out your inks to see, and paper combination, to see if your paper is going to allow that, getting a puddle of it down and then spreading it out, okay? My cardstock here is, again, glossy, and it's coated enough to where it doesn't absorb into the paper so fast, okay? Now here's the thing too, as I start applying this, I want this to have kind of a streaky appearance. Let me see if I have an example of that. Well, kind of, right here, like in this one, you can see these streaks of color coming across. So in other words, I don't just color in that whole thing the same value of blue, and that's what I'm going to want here. Now there's no set places where you have to have it. Just see, as I'm coming in here, this is a really light blue, but you can kind of see it right here, hopefully. You see if I'm coming in right here, and I'm leaving this kind of a little bit more open. Alright. You want to get a pretty decent amount down here, though, but just leave some small areas of white. Don't leave big, huge openings, okay? But leave a little bit of it. I think it'll serve us better having a little bit of the white of the page showing, okay? In kind of a streaky format. So where those streaks of light will appear are just where we don't streak in the color, okay? So what we're doing is we're kind of defining our light through the use of shadow, okay? Shade. Now if you noticed, I did one side of the card like this, and when I was ready to do my other side, I flipped it around like so, and just proceeded the same way. So my hand is always kind of staying right here. See this? And if I want to get down here, I don't come down here and do this. Okay, I'm right here, and see this? I just spin it around, and I go like that. I mean, sometimes I might do a little dabbing like this, or something like that, but for the most part, if I'm going to be doing this motion, I just turn my card. And that way I don't get any kind of, you know, stress build up in here, you know, for my muscles or, you know, in my wrist. You know, this is very light. I try to get my kind of transition and application of colors with repetition, okay? Now it's not, this is nice and loose here too, okay? I'm just going like this for the most part with my fingers, okay? You don't have to press harder if it's not going on fast enough. Now that's the tendency sometimes of people. They want to squeeze it out, you know, more, all right? And that's when you start getting, you know, like harsher shapes too, okay? Just keep it nice and light, all right? Now remember, as we start doing this now, the most amount of ink we're going to use is this lightest one. So don't worry about it. It's not going to take forever. You're not going to have to put in, you know, the same amount of ink with my, you know, your medium and darker tones as you do with the lightest tone, okay? So that was the Memento Simmer Sky. And just to kind of mix things up a little bit for those that don't have the same pads or applicators, just use what you're using, okay? But let's say, for example, and again, just keep using the same one that you're using. I'm just doing this as an example for those that don't have it out there. Why don't I switch my pad color to the Salvia Blue, okay? If you're still working on your Memento or whatever color you started off with, just keep using that one until you get a really good saturation, okay? Okay, now this is the Salvia Blue. It's a little bit darker, okay? But here's what I'm doing now. Use your first application. If you've switched colors, kind of use your first application of that, your blue, as a guideline for your next color, okay? So in other words, if you've left some of these streaks of light down here, now don't go and go over them with this next color, okay? Just stay away from those areas now, the darker you get, okay? And that will be our kind of that shimmery lit area down here, okay? It kind of becomes the focal point, those lighter areas, you know, that we retain just simply by not inking over them, okay? Same thing down here. I mean, this is, like I said, this is a larger, I think this is a half-page scene or something like that, but there's not a whole lot of light down here in this water, but having that lit and that lit really adds to the lighting scheme in the scene. It's coming like kind of like a light source and reflected light down here, okay? And same thing right here. You can see me, I do the same thing all the time. It's light up here, and it kind of gets darker somewhere in between the light source, and then I have a couple other areas that retain the light down here. Even if it isn't water, you see it down here, okay? It's light, a little bit of dark, light, dark, light, okay? So it kind of oscillates across the scene, all right? And this is all it is right here. It's this, you know, light, dark, light, dark, all right? Now, naturally, you don't always have to do that. I seem to do it an awful lot, though, but so this is kind of the foundation. It's the foundation for, I'll do another stamp along too with grass, okay, and we'll use some greens, and I'll show you some different types of combinations that I use for that. All right, but it's this oscillation and the retention of the light areas, okay, that's kind of key for me and what I'm going after. All right, now if you're done with your lighter tones, you can move up into your medium tone blues, okay? Whatever one you happen to have. Even if you didn't have a pad, if you had something like a, a dye-based Marvy pen or something like that, or you know, other pen, preferably with a wide tip. You know, you can even ink up a sponge tip by, you know, just grabbing some ink off of it like this, right? Okay. I'm all for mixing and matching and making do if you can. Most of the times we can, unless you just don't have any dye-based pads or something like that. Of course, there's more techniques than just this one too, alright? So again, now, here's the thing. When you start moving into your darker tones, now this is just a medium tone blue, we'll get darker than this. Kind of be careful around your lighter areas, okay? Again, we don't want just this solid bar of super dark blue in here now. So what I might do is, see this right in here, where it's, you know, light, dark, right here? What I'll do is I'll start in the middle here like this, and see I'm not moving anywhere. Just keep going here. Just keep bringing it in here. Now what you can't probably tell is I'm starting off on the edge like this, and then as it starts getting drier, then I start taking like longer swipes and taking that tone into the middle here because it's drier on here. And as I sweep in here, I want it drier on the tip so it becomes lighter, because the drier it is on here, the lighter the impression or streak is going to be, okay? So in other words, what that just means is when you start taking in your darker tones, medium tones and darker tones, just stay on the edge longer, okay? Before you start coming into the middle part, okay? Ink it up, starting off on the edge, and plus it's also a little bit more wet, so it's not grabbing the ink off of our applicator, okay? So just stay out there longer and let it develop, okay? So it's almost like I'm taking this thing right here that's almost like a flame, and I keep like kind of stretching it across here slowly. See this right here? See, it goes to right here, and you see I can keep going like that, right? And now we have this really nice transition going from dark to light like that, and that's what's happening in all these areas like that, okay? And this is the ergonomics of it. Okay, and I'm coming down here, corner. It's probably about an inch or so. Going to about 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 maybe, I don't know, 3 3/4, something like that. All right. Now you can come into these lighter areas too, where we've had the white. All right, but it's not a straight application of this color. It's a very dry, light one. Okay. Flip it around. So can you see what I'm doing right here? I'm kind of retaining those areas in there. And another thing you can do with whatever sponge tip you're using, you can also start going on the edge a little bit more if you want it to kind of be streaky like this. And you can have those fine streaks like that. There, let's see them right there? See, right here it's real smooth, and right here, it's because I had it on its edge like this, okay? It's not just one swipe, it's, a lot of times it's several passes like this, okay? See that? But those little streakier kind of bits like that will end up serving us well when it comes to the representation of water, okay? All right, that is the medium blue. And that was the Bahama blue from Memento. Let me use the light blue from Marby. It looks like it's almost the same hue. It's like I said in past videos, it's a different consistency though with the Marby light blue color. and the Mementos one. Marvies are a little bit thinner, so sometimes you get a little bit more penetration into the surface of the... I'm going to put together a listing of pads that I think are beneficial. I don't know if there's a pad out there that I don't like, but there's certainly ones that I like having, not more than others, but just in conjunction with, and certainly some of the Marvy ones, some of the more scenic stamping ones like blues and greens and browns, they might be a good thing to get for people. And I'll put a list out there at some point in time. Memento. Okay, now I've reached a full saturation of the medium tone like that. See these little areas still remaining of the light? If you need to pause this video to catch up, do so now before I move into the Memento, or just our darker tones, okay? Okay, going on with the darkest one, and I'm just staying with my same tip here, okay? The Memento ink is a very thick ink, so I'm not getting too much penetration right now. See, I have to kind of tap it, you know, in order for it to start applying. Now see, this is where the Marvies really come in handy. Now it doesn't mean that if I went just straight with the darker tone on a blank piece of paper, you know, it would be darker, right? But because this page is starting to achieve kind of a full saturation on the surface and in the pulp of the paper a little bit to a degree, the ink isn't applying very quickly, okay? Which is good and bad. It's good because it really spreads out nice and smoothly, you know, and I'm not getting harsh marks. I can really spread it around. Even if I put a big blob of it like that on there, it just spreads out beautifully, right? But if I want it to get darker faster, that's where a thinner ink over the thick inks come in handy, and that's the Marvy ones. This one happens to be the number 3 blue, it's called. Just plain blue from Marvy. Okay. And I can see it's just getting a little bit darker, a little bit faster, okay? Now, remember, like in the medium tone blue, now we're getting even darker, so I might stay on the outside a little bit longer. Okay, remember to always spin your card around. It's nice and ergonomic. I don't feel any stress in my wrist here or anywhere like, you know, forearm or something like that. If you're, you know, keep it all within your kind of range of effectiveness, you might say. Okay. Okay, that is the dark blue right there. If you can get darker and darker using that, you know, more of that existing ink, especially on the perimeter, 4 corners, keep doing that. And if you need to pause this video, go ahead and do that now, because I'm going to move on to the water texture stamp next, and we'll show you how to apply that, or what's going on, you know, in the different scenes where that water texture, it has been applied, okay? All right? Okay. The water texture stamp can be used in many different ways, okay? You can stamp it out just in black over the top of this. I could have stamped it out in the beginning and put all that tone around or over the top of the texture. But what I like to do usually is I like to see what value my surface became after all those layers of ink have been laid down before I start using my water texture stamp. I could stamp the water texture first, put some tones over it, and then stamp more texture, depending on how much texture still is visible. So like I said, there's many ways you can do that. There's scenic stamping, usually it's not a linear process. Okay, do this step, 1, 2, 3, now you're on coloring, now you're on embellishments, whatever. You can add imagery down, you can color it, add more imagery, you know, embellishments, whatever. Put more color down, you know, if need be. You can even change the color scheme if you want to. Somewhat. But as far as this water texture stamp goes, and water, after I apply all my things down, now sometimes it's working around imagery and I'll use this water texture just in this small area or something like that. But, like I said, for the sake of this video, we're doing it big so you can really see what's going on here. Okay, now this color that I'm going to start off with, I'm going to start it off with the lightest of tones again. Oh, good thing I kind of cleaned this off. I think there was some black on that before that I didn't wash off. Okay, but very, very light tone, okay? It's the color that we used first. I'm not even bothering. Well, maybe I should just stamp it out perimeter a little bit. But you can barely see it. The only place you can see it is in my lighter areas, right? Because these are transparent inks that we're using. It's not like you'd see like a light blue over the top of a dark blue, okay? These are transparent inks. That's what dye-based inks are. But you can see that lighter texture only shows up in an area that's lighter than that color of blue, meaning all the areas that we've retained the white, okay? So what we do now is we go to our next color of blue. If you need to pause the video, if you haven't stamped that texture stamp in all your light areas, go ahead and do so. Now let's go to the medium tone blue. Alright, this is the Bahama blue again. Okay. Now, it shows up down here for me. See that right here? But I just know that when that dries, it's because it's wet. But when that dries, that darker tone underneath, I don't think you'll be able to see it as prominently as you do now. Okay? But, okay, what I do is I start in my, see what I'm doing? I'm starting in my darker areas and moving my way in. Okay? Maybe in some of these areas I just, you know, leave it the lighter impression of this, but you can see what's kind of going on now. Okay? Darker. Okay, wet, drier, driest, okay? And it's the driest in the interior here, okay? You can even do this right here, okay? You don't always have to do the full impression. Sometimes I just might want to use little bits of it like that, okay? Especially in those areas in between the light, okay? These little streaky areas. Maybe I want to get a little texture in there, okay? So that's what it's looking like now. It's looking a little bit deeper now, in my opinion, all right? We have some texture over the top of all that value. It's looking a little bit more shimmery to me. Okay, let's go with that Danube blue. That was the darker tone. I'll probably have to use that number 3 Marvy as well. But where do we put this? We put it in the darker areas where the lighter areas won't, or the lighter impressions won't really show up too well. Okay. Alright, so it's kind of stamped all on that side. I didn't take it in here too far, so it's kind of maybe going 1.5 inches right here. But you have to look at your cards and kind of figure out. All of our cards are going to be look different, okay? My streaks might be going in farther than yours. Some of them are, ours are, you know, there's more light areas. Everyone's is going to look different. That's the way it always was in any of my workshops, you know. We might use the same stamps, same colors. Everyone's card comes out looking a lot different. It just depends on how much ink someone's used. How much of the second ink someone's used. People's have different touches, okay? Now I'm going kind of crazy. I'm really adding a lot of that texture down, okay? Just for the sake of this how-to video, okay? Let me use the darker blue, the Marvy blue. Okay, and I'll use that on the perimeter. It's almost like using this almost becomes like a shading tool, because the more impressions I put of it in darker tones, the darker it gets, okay? Alright, so you can almost see what's going on my blotter paper. I'm stamping this off, kind of like this. See how it gets that transition right here? From dark to light. And that's what's happening in here. I'm going from dark to light. Now this does not look good at all. Right here. It's too busy, but that's to be expected with all that texture in there. So what you do, let's go back to our applicator, okay? Now, I'm not undoing something that I didn't want. I know it always gets this way. Well, not always. I mean, this is really busy right here, but what I always do is I come back in with some additional streaks. Now I see how that texture looks on here, okay? You know, before I use this, I saw how that tone looked in there. Then I put on the texture, then I apply more tone, okay? So, if you've applied all of your texture in there, if you're still doing that, you can pause the video right now. But I'm just going to start off with some additional streaks in here, just to kind of mellow out that background a bit. I'm hitting it right here, here. I'm not going to hit it everywhere, okay? I'm just kind of doing this type of thing. Okay? And I'll do that in maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. Just to kind of mellow that out some. I really like it in my 4 corners because I think that frames the scene off. Now if I had just a small area of a scene where there's water, then I might hit, you know, kind of the perimeter of that, I don't know, pool of water or pond in a scene or whatever. Okay, let me do something too. Let me hit this. And I'll hold this up so you can see what the difference is, okay? See how this is kind of, these 3 corners are now? And this one's really super busy still. So I think these look better. But you can still see the texture in there. It's just kind of underneath the surface a little bit more. So that's what we're looking for. This is almost has a glowing look right now, right? And that's what's achieved by using those lighter tones. A lot of times the lighter tones don't even show up very much. Definitely not in their purest form, okay, because I've laid so many other colors over the top. But that color right there is underneath all these colors right here, you know, the darker tones. And that's where I think we get this kind of deeper look in terms of, in this case, it's water depth, but just the saturated kind of feeling of a scene. There's more dimension to it when you utilize enough of those lighter tones underneath the surface. Okay, 4 corners. As I'm spinning my card. Okay. Alright, so that is your basic water texture application. Sponge application of color as well. But let me show you something too, alright? Now, we've just done this in blue. If I was doing a sunset, it would probably be done in browns or something like that, in oranges. It might be something like this. If you have distress inks, which, I don't know, most of us do, those ones would be good to use in this kind of color scheme as well. If we're warming it up a little bit, you know, you would start adding in things like oranges to the color scheme. I'm not just saying it in Marby. You mix and match other brands of dye-based inks. Okay, this is starting to look more kind of sunset. Let's see, that type of thing right here. You can add red in here if you want to. But anyways, going back to this blue one, this is a very simple, you know, type of color scheme. Light, medium, dark. Light, medium, dark. But sometimes when I do this right here, I mean, it looks okay to me, but what I like to do quite often is, here, let me see right here. Here's a scene right here. There's just a little pond area, but you can see the different colors in here. There's a little bit of pink and yellow. There was yellow in here. I know you can see this kind of greenish tinge in here, but that's because some of that yellow overlapped the blue that I had down here. So I think that it makes a more full looking, I don't know, body of water when it becomes more reflective of what's going on around it. Or if you just simply want to take a body of water like this, and if you want to kind of change or enhance a certain kind of emotional quality of it. Let me see, I was looking to see if I had some clean tips around here. I don't think I do. Let me use another one of these cosmetic sponges. Alright. Alright. If you want to change some of the kind of the emotional quality of a body of water, I mean, it doesn't always have to be blue, but a lot of the scenes are going to be, because they're, you know, we're doing scenic stamping here. But let's say if you wanted to make something more kind of warm, magical, aqua tinted, what you do is you just take a green, preferably not like a Christmas green or a pine green, you know, something real dark like that. But if you have kind of a sea mist foam green, this one happens to be pale green from Marvy, just any kind of dull green, kind of a pastel color scheme or color hue. And what you do is you just kind of bring that into the scene. I wouldn't do it everywhere. I mean, you could if you really like it, but you can see what that did right there? See that warmth in there? It just starts to kind of glow even more. But I think that looks better when it's not just over everything, okay? So I might just put in some streaks. What I'm doing is I'm doing this type of thing right here. Same type of thing that I did with the blue tones, right? And I'm being a little bit more selective because we are changing hue here, and we're also adding an element of temperature, okay? So it is going to alter it. Maybe warmer waters can look more, you know, when we start kind of really getting into scenic stamping, one of the things is when you're first starting out, we're thinking about compositions, colors, things like that. But the more you do it, the more you can start thinking about things like emotion or something like that, and doing these little tweaks that can change the emotional quality of a scene. So instead of depicting a, you know, a cabin in the fields or something like that, you can make it more of a, I don't know, like a dreamy cabin somewhere, or a dreamscape somewhere that you would, you know, that you really want to be in or something like that. You know, would you want to swim in the waters that were nice and crystal blue? Yeah. But if we add this kind of aqua look to it, you know, maybe that water looks even more inviting. Maybe it's warmer and tropical or something like that. Those little types of tweaks that we can do in our scene. Alright, so that's the water pattern and color application. Alright? It looks kind of weird in here. I mean, I could just stamp something like, you know, Lakeside Cove in here. At this point in time, you can put it right over it, right? Like we did in the previous ones. But that's the basics of the water, you know, so using it in light, medium, and dark tones. So we have dark, medium, and light tones with the color streaking. Okay, it's the same type of thing. We do little embellishments with color, streak from the outside edge in like that, so we get this nice transition of value going from dark to light, because it's going from wet to dry. And that's what's happening in all of these right here. Even this scene right here, which we'll do next, but you can see these streaks of darker green coming in from the outside, right? And then it's lighter in here because I've taken the streak in like that. It's a darker streak right here, darker streak coming in right here, and see this right over here? It's lighter than it is over here. So it's the exact same thing as this. We're using different color schemes and a different texture. Instead of using water, we just used sedge filler. But as I do my grass texture stamp along, you'll see it's the exact same technique that's going on. We'll just change our texture and we'll change our color scheme. Alright, so anyways, that's your water right there. If you stamped along with me, I hope you enjoyed doing that and you learned everything that you'll ever want to know about water and then some. And when you apply it into your scenes, you'll know, you know, exactly what you're doing if you haven't done this before. And like I said, if you're doing a sunset type of thing, just start with your lighter tones and work into your darker tones, and when you get to your water texture stamp, use those exact same colors that you applied in the sponging technique. And also, one of the things you can do if you want to kind of play around with this, after you've done that, what you can do is you can just do some water texture on a blank piece of paper, but maybe go through those 3 color schemes. Use your lighter one, you know, on a blank piece of paper, then use your darker one, come in from the outside, you know, have the lighter tones in the middle, then use your darker tone, alright, and then put your color on over the top of that texture instead, so it's kind of, you know, working a little bit more in reverse than what we just did on this one by applying the tone first, okay? So, like I said, there's many ways you could do it. And different tones you can do them in. You can even do them in black. It takes on a different feel and character. It's more, I don't know, I wouldn't say threatening, but, you know, the deeper the shadows, the more dramatic the feel, so maybe more drama. This one would be more, I don't know, serene or something like that, so depends on what you're going after, what emotional character, but you can achieve it all just by changing things around a little bit. So anyways, Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for stamping along with me.